because I say, where do I stand now? Okay, so that's it. Okay. And then secondly, still a bit related to this issue of methodology, you cited on page 24 and elsewhere it happens, this very factor about one Nanga who during trance gave a slightly different narrative, and when he was out of trance, he also gave a slightly different narrative in terms of facts. Again, this is about reliability of these people who can take, who can be embodied by a spirit when they speak, and when they are outside that space, they also speak something else. So dealing with this category of people, how reliable would you say they were?
Okay.
Yes, Nyasha?
All right. Thank you, Prof. I also had that question, I think, for a very long time on that issue of reliability. But as I indicate in my work, there is not one single source that can tell a story. So with that, I thought getting those perspectives that were sort of contradicting, I thought it was important, because I then consulted other sources, especially the archives and newspapers, in order to verify, the authenticity of that information that I got from those sources that we might as well consider to be maybe unreliable.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response. And in that regard, is the esoteric nature of this research that you're doing. And you mentioned that also as a challenge you face. How much will these people give of this esoteric knowledge that is, supposed to be also protected in a way, so that it doesn't trade everywhere? And so you may not exactly answer this, but I'm echoing the same questions you asked, and it remains something that is hanging. And, the same with after days of the diary session, you said, because that session could take days sometimes. When the person finally comes to admit, because the Uroyis hardly admit that they are, and when they are pressed to, they may admit that they are finally, or something. I mean, you get exhausted. So from your participation in these sessions, when you saw some of these performances, by the way, I went online and watched one of what looks like the diary, and it looks very, very complicated in terms of how can you arrive at truth? Because I saw the women who were right there in the center, having also quite a good time. For me, I enjoyed it like a performance, because they will say things that will be applauded by those several people in the crowd listening. And on the other side, so the whole setting of that space makes it so difficult to say, how can you arrive at truth? How can you arrive at some situations that can make you say, well, is it exhaustion that they reach and they finally say, I confess? What is your judgment of that space as a scholar?
Okay, yeah, I find that one a bit difficult, but from the evidence that I got, I discovered that there are several factors that are at play in those forums. For instance, those sessions are attended by not only ordinary people, but by the Nganga, who actually argue that they know, they can actually read people's minds, they can see that is beyond the human ordinary eyes. So in that case, it's a fact. Those are also facts. But it takes the people in attendance, to whether confirm. If they agree on that, it becomes a fact. And therefore, it becomes maybe a source in archive for us as academics to use as evidence in our theorizations of this phenomenon.
Okay, thank you. I want to take you still one more segment of methodology, and that is the issue of positionality. In chapter 1.3, you have given us really your own encounter with the unseen at age 12. And this is a graphic section that if I hand you my book, I say, is this a dream? At first. And then later on, as I got to the end, I saw it was not a dream. It was a mixture of really being in this world, in the other, like the magical realism at play there, but there are also people right here, physical. So we can't say that you experienced or you rubbed shoulders with Uroyi at first hand in that regard. And so this is a very important aspect, definitely, as a method, because it helps to persuade your reader that, yes, this thing is real. It's not something to be rubbish. And especially when you are researching as one who speaks back to the colonial, atrocities on African epistemology. But then again, you reach a point, you said, how has this particular phenomenon influenced the lens you use throughout in this study? At one level, it does what I've said, really. You're giving us a convincing whatever. But as a historian, researcher, analyst, how did you manage to, moderate these biases that are likely to be inevitable in this particular context? Just tell us your experience. This is a very slippery ground because you are a believer, right?
Oh, okay.
Yes, Nyasha.
All right. Yeah, that this subject is a bit complicated, as you have rightly pointed out. It actually involves matters to do with belief. And as scholars, we rely on facts. That's a fact. So for us to construct facts from evidence that is picked from a belief, what most people consider to be belief, is a problem. But that is where exactly the issue of the use of multiple sources to verify, to collaborate other sources. That's where I I managed to that's how I managed to avoid those biases, but they are inevitable. We can't run away from that fact. But other sources, so many sources confirmed some of that information that I got from sources that we might consider to be a bit problematic and unreliable. So yeah, that would be my take on that.
All right. Thank you. I actually concluded that segment with the reality that really we don't know all knowledge. There is something that we don't know. And that is what that segment just makes it. It's not only in African traditional religion, but also in other religious experiences that yeah, there is an opening to the transcendental, the supernatural, and so on. So that's it. Okay, very good. Let's now move to the third element here, which is the big thing, and it's yeah, the complicated issue of witchcraft, which is really the big thing here. It is true that in history we know that the fight against witchcraft, even in Europe, as you have rightly referred to, was okayed, you know, by the church and state coalition, where, you know, those things that are different from your practice, you consider as frightening and threatening, and you take certain positions about it. And this, as you have rightly said, was also very much linked to the colonialism quest to go out there when the Purple Bull documents, like of the discovery, give the go-ahead to go. You are also going to definitely evangelize. That is where I think the link between the colonialists and the missionaries are, although you have tended to largely just put them together without fine-tuning how that alliance between them work. But now the issue is, as you have rightly informed, Europe reached a point when also, after the colossal death, mainly of women, over 80% of women accused of witchcraft happened, and lots of property lost. You know, there reached a point as they were approaching the Industrial Revolution and printing, wherever, they need to stop. They stopped, and then they went. So you said rightly that it is this mentality that was brought to Africa, and I agree, because colonialism, the height of colonialism happened in the 18th, is it 18th or what? 17th, I mean 19th, yes, 19th century. And so after over 300 years of devastating effect of witch hunt in Europe, the colonialists came to the continent, having gone through that painful experience. So I find it a bit ingenious on your part to think that you can expect people who have gone through the ravages of witchcraft hunt in Europe can come on in the continent and not work in the direction of stamping what traditional religion was doing in what they saw as witch hunt. And so that is one. So when you write that, you know, yeah, it is true, this is historical, that the people, what they saw in Europe then as barbaric, when they came here, they began to see as barbaric. Not specifically because it is, you know, a ploy, which is what you say, to just loot the Africans. But the worldview around that time had changed from the other one where they had been. Here they found what they had been in still being practiced in the continent. And so it was quite convenient for them, isn't it, to begin to suppress. What do you think? Not necessarily because it is a mechanism to loot the Africans.
Okay, thank you, Professor Tupio. On that note, yeah, you are right that it was quite convenient for them to just continue with those ideas about, you know, suppressing the belief, because they had witnessed what they'd witnessed in Europe. But again, from the evidence, it appears they used that to their advantage, because after colonial conquest, the military conquest, it was important for the colonialists to culturally disarm Africans. So in that respect, discouraging this belief, it became one way of interfering with African cultural practices and religion. So maybe the belief in Uroyi and the Uroyi suppression mechanisms, they were just caught maybe in the crossfire, so to speak, but the bulk of the evidence points to the fact that this was actually deliberate because they understood that people in these societies, Uroyi is real, and some sections of the European community in Africa, they actually believed in it. They actually lived it. So in that case, it becomes complicated. It ceases to be that straightforward. So maybe that is why they continued with that. So yeah.
Thank you. I just wish you could make that complication more evident, because it's like you have not factored that in, and this, I think, is important. It's playing that double role in that regard. Okay. Related to that, I'm asking this question because I find a lot of similarity in what happened in Europe in those days of witch hunt, and what is the traditional African practice here in particularly Zimbabwe. So there, the women again are the victims, the majority there and here in Africa. So what I was asking is this also part of the replication? Or was this something already existing in the African worldview in that place, that women are always suspected of witchcraft? Because this is quite similar to what was happening in Europe. And looks like you could have taken advantage of this and do a more critical analysis, but because you are kind of bent on showing this is not that one bypassed you. I just want you to pay attention to it. What is happening here on women on both sides? And especially when you mention the fact that Uroyi, you contest that view of Uroyi is not a weapon of the weak. Here you can see really the strong are using a weapon against the Varoi, who are largely women. So I don't know again whether that's your positionality as a man who kind of remained blind to that segment of the glaring similarity between the two. So you could pay attention that, if you agree.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. And maybe I can also add that why we witness similarities from the developments in Europe and what we witnessed in the 19th and 20th century Africa and Zimbabwe, the size, is that Uroyi itself, the understanding of Uroyi becomes universal, because these ideas of Uroyi in Zimbabwe, they can actually be used as well to make sense of the various understandings of Uroyi in other contexts. So I would say it becomes universal.
Yes, I agree. And I think, and from a gender perspective, it can even bring in something more there to nuance what you are trying to say. Thank you. Okay. And now, on the issue of the difference between the Varoi, Uroyi, and the Nanga, where the colonialists just say, what is the difference? They are the same. I just want you to explain something a little more on that. You really make effort to create the distinction between the two and claiming, refusing the claim that a Nanga can be both a hammer and a healer. Yes, and the colonialists did not think so. And again, this is coming from their worldview because witchcraft was what they call witchcraft, are different, categories of witchcraft you practice. And some that they do such harm, and some that do the equivalent what our Nangas do. so so when they say there is no big difference, for me, I'm now asking that question also as somebody who is African and who knows something. I mean about this practice. I am living in society and I have relatives who I may not be a practitioner, but the thing is, isn't it a very slippery ground? Can you really say that there is such a distinction between an Uroyi and a Nanga, who is a traditional healer? Because at what point does because both of them have access to supernatural energies, and they have access to the occult, though you don't want to add very much. Yes, yes. And so one uses it for good ends and another uses it for anti-society ends. But then I was saying, when a Nanga turns a human being into a bird, for example, in the process of curing another person, and it's like teach you a lesson, after some 3 days you'll come back to. So isn't that so? For me, just enlighten us more about that slippery terrain of distinction between that two. And what about if I fail? They both, even a Nanga asks for pay, pay. If I fail to meet the requirement, wouldn't he, Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for that question. I think I've been asked that question several times. So, but it's important that you've asked it. So let me start with my point during my presentation when I said, it is important for us to use cultural and liberated terms. These terms, concepts, help us make that distinction. So in this case, I came up with what I call kurapa roya. That is a concept that I created myself to emphasize the fact that there are people who claim to be healers or have powers to heal, and they also have powers to harm. So it becomes kurapa is to heal, roya, and that is to harm in that context. So it becomes kurapa roya. So that line now between someone who is capable of healing and harming creates a problem here. So for us now to draw a distinction between Enganga, in this case, I refer to a healer, someone we mean good to the society. I go back to the intention. Everyone has access to those powers, supernatural powers, and knowledge of herbs and plants. So when someone uses those powers for healing, now they become like the Nganga, who is serving the society, who is there for the benevolence of the society. But now if someone acquires those powers to harm, it becomes something else. So of course that distinction is difficult to draw, but if we use these terms now, we'll be able to explain and to understand where the Nganga, who is there to heal the land, the people, and those people who are into harming society. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I like the third category that you have created between the two that takes care of that. Thank you. Now, quickly on this issue, what is the limit from your definition of Uroyi? Because we have seen that Uroyi is really a contested meaning that keeps roving, and one category refers this to Uroyi, the other one. So how do you, what are the limits? When do you say now this is not Uroyi? Because when the people in the Chimurenga war also referred to those people who were collaborators as Varoi and so on. So what really is the, how will you now define Uroi from this moving sense of the definition of the word?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I also had challenges at first, but from the evidence that I gathered, and the sources, the literature that I read, I came to the conclusion that defining Uroyi needs to be contextualized. We need to think about the context in which the term is being applied and used. So yeah, that's my response to that.
Okay, thank you. I want to take you on the issue of combating evil from the worldview of the Mazambezi, and creating a fairly evil-free or evil-harnessed community, which is what you deal with also in chapter 3, and where you have given elaborate explanation of what these people do in that process. And you have also evoked proverbs that people use, because you are aware in this research, just like it was in the witchcraft hunt in Europe, that lots of mistakes can be made in framing as Varoi those who are innocent and they are killed. So now, in this regard, there seems to, on both sides, here and here on the continent, like your space and in Europe, a lot of violence has been committed around this, even in here. Although, again, there your tone is more apologetic on the violence that is you explain it away, because you take us through the 3 stages of the process, and finally ending in the Gandavaroy, finally. But is like I feel there are certain silences here that you suppress certain information. This is my accusation. You can defend yourself. And the number of those accused of Varoi in this situation, I want to know, because of the wrongful accusation that was clearly there, how did this affect their turning to Christianity? Because that is an area there that you are also quite silent. And when I checked that actually Zimbabwe is 80 and more % Christian denomination, and the Varoi or traditional African believers are around 2%. So I'm saying, why the silence here? Because we have a similar situation in a text like Things Fall Apart, which is fiction, but fiction built on reality, where categories of people who fall in the, Efulefu, Varoi category and so on, the ones who feel uncomfortable are among those who join Christianity. So in your analysis, I see not much of this coming. Why? Because I see you are just positing things in a very binary conflictual relationship between them and us. And yet there is a whole middle ground there that this violence, I imagine you'll tell us, must have generated a lot of people also seeking refuge there for the excesses that they are experiencing in the hands of the traditional African indigenous knowledge system that they are under. So what do you have to say about that?
Thank you, Prof. That is a bit complicated question, but from the evidence that I gathered, I will respond this way. Firstly, to your question on how did these African efforts to combat evil affected the African people's like conversions to Christianity. I will argue that a belief is something that cannot be eradicated so easily. So much so that maybe to use Nisbet Taringa's view that Africans, they took what is called a schizophrenic attitude, whereby they were Christians, but that is Christians during the day and believers of the African traditional religion at night. So they had this is like a form of a religion which they presented, but they also adhered to their practices. So even if we say a society or a nation like Zimbabwe has the highest percentage of Christians, that attitude which Nisbet Taringa pointed out still stands. Most of them, they adhere to this kind of religion. Okay, let me explain why do I say so. There is Nyerezi Jekanyika, this scholar, who argue that if we think about African Chiwani, this form of a religion and culture is often practiced in secret. So the fact that it is practiced in secret, it comes from that 19th century condemnation of African cultural and religious practices. So that condemnation and people's decision to embrace Christianity does not necessarily, in this case, mean that they actually embraced Christianity as a whole, but they used it just as a cover, because even in these modern times, in contemporary Zimbabwe, most people can still practice these cultures. But here we have that situation. There was another question, the first one. I think I missed that.
The first one, okay, maybe I can rephrase, which is you have really kind of answered, but for me, the issue of evil, the contest between good and evil, and I was saying, is this not a metaphysical reality that we have to live with? That evil and good exist side by side, and this vehement search to eradicate society from evil, I expected also you to be critical on that, because it's like, how far can you stretch it? Because, yeah, there are forms of harnessing, yes, but when it becomes to how the Varrois are, we are living with Varrois all over in our communities and so on. And we have different ways of protecting ourselves against them. When you are a believer like me, we have prayers, you know? So it's like this is a fact you live with. So why the hunt? Why not suppress this hunt? You know, that is what I wanted to hear you about.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, that one goes back to issues to do with spiritual harm and spiritual security.
Mm,
These things they occur in secrets, so people they don't go out to look for these things, but it just happens. So in that case, most
mm.
people they seek justice. So
But you see,
justice in
it is also inherited because there are some who acquire, some have inherit. Yeah, and I'm just saying, if it is part of the indigenous knowledge inheritance, you know, from our ancestors, good and bad, why don't we keep the whole package?
yeah, that one goes back to the discussion on societal cleansing and the will of the ancestors in African societies. So, I mean, how Africans understand evil. What does evil or the antisocial elements in a society, what do they do?
Mm,
They affect the productivity
mm.
and the well-being of the
That far
societies.
is excellent. I really agree. Yes, because we all, whether it is in whichever religious form, we do have those rituals of cleansing, of and the wealth of African culture is really integrating you to society, and you know, perhaps there will be even a relapse. It's not a given that there may not, but they have a ritual performance act to get people, you know, reintegrated without necessarily the mindset of eliminating, because it is a fundamental force of our being. Yes. So I wanted your critical view on that. That's okay. You have convinced me in what you have said. That's okay. As we are moving towards time, I will soon end. Now I want you to talk about you know, what I consider silences in this work, which are like maybe opportunities that you will have engaged with and you could still do to make this work stronger. And one of the silences I see is, you mentioned Edward Said here, and you are dealing with something of post-colonial theory and so on, and you shied away from the force of hybridity, which is a very powerful force of the post-colonial subject's identity. So that at the end, the discourse between, you know, Christianity and Uroyi need not be seen in a very antagonistic terms, because what you call the schizophrenic attitude, if you, I will share, you will just get it. You are a strong scholar. The post-colonial reader, you will select texts like from Chinua Achebe, who explains how Africans know how to live very comfortably with what they have inherited indigenously and their Christianity identity. It's not like schizophrenia for them, you know? And you can bring that right up to the current practice of Christianity, the Pentecostal that you made references to, but you have not taken it further. You know, if you talk about what the Pentecostals say, like, which is now in your thesis here coming as Christian saying, which is sending it back to the center. Sending, and I was saying, how Christian is this sending it back to the sender? You know, for me, this is not Christian as such. It is already a hybrid form, you know, because we have integrated aspects of indigenous religion, and you can see the overwhelming participation of African Christians in evangelical Pentecostal things, and they come with that mind frame, and there is a lot of African indigenous religion inside this thing. And so, in a way, Africans are learning to adapt, you know, they select hybrid and clone their own version of Christianity. And again, I would like you to read again in that post-colonial text that you will download. It's available. You will read Homi Baba's essay on Signs Are Taken for Wonders. That one is going to be very useful for you to show that we are, you know, the way we have received Christianity or whichever foreign religion that is, we have accustomed it to fit into, you know, yeah. So there is no one Christianity in that sense, in the way it is practiced. So you could explore more of that. And I also want to challenge you to not to shy away, because overwhelmingly the tone of your thesis is, like I'm saying, this wonderful thesis that we want to celebrate has a tone of binarism. Yes, where they are there, we are here, and I'm defending us tone. I think for a scholar, you need to tone that down and, you know, emphasize on, you know, neutral terminologies, and especially where you were calling, you know, the missionaries and the colonialists. Something.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. I'm sure that the gods wanted some to take a cup of tea, and some, I hope that I hope that you took advantage of that opportunity, at least to take a cup of tea before we continue. So let's proceed with the engagement of our thesis.
Okay. Thank you. Sam, are you there?
Yes, Prof, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We are actually coming to the end of our very rich discussion, and like I just said, I want to engage you on an area of silence that will enrich your work, and that is in the area of tapping into the post-colonial theory that you mentioned. And indeed, your research traverses that period. And what we see in this space is the effort to coexist, you know, different forms of hybridity that, you know, becomes our identity. Yes. And I want you to just reflect on your own Zimbabwean resistance music, Chimurenga. You have used Chimurenga as a battlefield thing, and later on, I think I attended some seminar where someone presented something about Chimurenga music, which is a powerful symbol for me of how the hybrid of the contemporary culture is integrated in the music, from the mbira to the modern guitar and so on. So we, as post-colonial subject, that's the kind of mind we have, that we pick what works with us. And I think these pointers that I gave to you can help you to add some value to that, to tone down on the binarism. And I want also to point you to what I started with about history, as you presented in this research, is not really a matter of past records. You have shown us through your research that history is moving, and you have positioned this research up to 2024, and there are lots of things that have changed along the line. I want particularly to refer to the new tone and the new attitude that is in the church, the very church that at one time occurred the witch hunt and the colonialization, to now a church that has opened up to applauding and appreciating indigenous knowledge. And I want you not to be shy to reach out to church documents. Many times when we do scholarship of this nature, we shout out very interesting discussions that are going on inside church that can actually enrich your research. I know in recent time, Pope John Paul II and more repeatedly now Pope Francis has had many dialogues with indigenous people, and he has openly encouraged them to practice. And the pointer now is to look to indigenous knowledge as that which could help save us on so many things. So even along that trajectory, we can say we have gone a full circle almost. After public apologies because of the excesses that were really there. So your research should show awareness of this and not appear to be trapped in the past, because we are moving on to accommodate and become more, So finally, I would like to really congratulate you for this very rich research, which is engaging and which, in my view, has a very short journey to being a published monograph that can enrich discussions around this subject. So back to you if you want to say anything about the things that are pointed as my parting remarks. Otherwise, really, I congratulate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor Dipio. I think most of the things that you said in your concluding remarks were more of comments and
Sam, please turn on your video. Thank you.
I don't know what happened to my video.
Okay, just
think now we don't want accident.
Okay, go ahead. Just go ahead then.
All right. Yeah, so I was saying most of the information that you gave me, I think it is more of suggestions on how to improve my work. So yeah, I would like to thank you for that. And yeah, that's.
Thank you, Chair. To you.
Thank you very much. Professor Dipio, I think you deserve a big round of applause. You've really done a good job engaging the candidate. And thank you very much, Sam, for being calm. For my next PhD, I want to be able to be as calm as you are when I get to defend. But it's not yet done. So Sam, you still have to listen to and respond to. Oh. No, so we've been running on generator. I think it's this.
Yeah, the voice is there.
So Farouk is telling me we are on, but because I don't see anything on, I'm not believing him. But okay, the powers of Uroyi. Okay, that is fine then. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I would now like to come to the panelists to engage the candidate, and I would like to begin first of all I would like to begin by apologizing that when I introduced the panelists, I did not introduce Dr. Sinje Kavumba, I skipped him. It is not that we discriminate you here, but I think my eyes went this side after the opponent and I didn't look back this way. And so by the time I looked back, I was like, oh, I already told the candidate to begin. So Dr. Sinje is a lecturer in the School of Law, Makerere University, and he's one of the panelists and will be engaging the student. Doctor, do you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome to the academic community here. Congratulations, Nyasha, for getting to this point. I've read your work and I think it's quite interesting. I'd just like to engage you on a few points, some of which have been touched upon by Prof. DPO. The first is the silence that she pointed out regarding the question of gender. I would also add the issue of older persons, because you note at various points in your thesis that many of those who are accused of Uroyi, of the bad kind of Uroyi, were women, and particularly older women and also older men. So just to engage with the question about how that might, have certain silences in that regard, or a failure to engage with questions around the rights of older persons. The other is related to the first one, the question around constitutional values, which I think is largely not engaged with in your thesis. So while you might have made the argument that in the colonial time, there was a failure to have a consensus on certain values, surely that argument you're less perhaps able to make that argument post 2013, since presumably the people of Zimbabwe agreed to a constitution, which presumably unites the societies of Zimbabwe in terms of certain agreed values, which presumably might include the right to life under Article 48 of the Constitution, the right to human dignity under Article 51, freedom from torture under Article 53, freedom of conscience and belief under Article 60, the rights to a fair hearing under Article 69, and rights of accused persons under Article 17, for example. So the thesis is largely silent on those questions, which might be useful frameworks for mediating the various values at stake, the rights of persons to believe in what they want to believe, and also the rights of persons who are accused and perhaps may even be harmed, including killed, on the basis of belief. That's something that doesn't quite, it doesn't seem to be sufficiently engaged with. Finally, it's related to the first two also. At various points you talked about, so the critical reader, Prof. DPO, talked about a moving definition. And your response was that it depends on context. And then you also said belief is not something that can be eradicated easily. Fair enough. However, must it be something that should be eradicated? Can the people of Zimbabwe today in 2024 not coexist side by side even with those who believe things that they may not necessarily agree with? Especially where, so is it really something that you have to grapple with? If an alternative way, could an alternative way not be dealing with the harm, direct harm that might be caused by persons engaging in certain beliefs, such as where they engage in child sacrifice or other forms of sacrifice, so that there you have penal codes, etc. So could you not avoid this entire question of a moving definition that might depend on context, that may of course then be problematic from constitutional values, etc., by simply saying everyone has the right to believe in whatever they might believe, which is indeed what is at issue in Article 60 of your Constitution, except that no one on the basis of their belief has the right to harm another person in ways that, the law can contend with. I think those are that for now, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to have one other panelist, and then we'll give the candidate an opportunity to respond. So, Dr. Mpiangu, please.
Thank you, Chair. think it's okay. Yeah, thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity to also say a few things regarding Mr. Chikowero's work. Like the rest have engaged with his work, I'd like to say that it's the kind of work that engages, you know, with what Christianity, with what society grapples with, and this is a lived reality in Chikowero's own world. Samuel, I'm going to also say something about the women. So the gendered motivations and details in the accusations of Uroyi is something that needs to be given a little more space. And as you can see, very many other panelists are finding it important. So the largest proportion of the people accused of Uroyi in Zimbabwe are women. What is your own take? Why do you think so? Who is a woman in the Zimbabwe society, and with which lens does society view women? Is it because they carry life and so they are occupied with, you know, people watching from a certain perspective? I would like you to reflect on that. The gendered motivations of that segment of your work. Secondly, the Christian beliefs and the beliefs in the broader cultural setting or set of meanings and understandings referred to by the Zimbabwe. Your work clearly shows that many professed Christians in the country profess a belief and continue to profess a belief in Uroyi. So they profess Christianity, but they also, you know, profess to believe in Uroyi. This is something that I know I would refer to as a double belief system. Why did you shy away from delving deeper and staying a little longer with this paradox? Because the Christians are Zimbabwe, first of all. So what comes first? The Christian or Zimbabwe? So if I am born within Zimbabwe and now I am a Christian, so the other sets of beliefs that are surrounding me would have something to do with me, which again is why I appreciate your work, because you are contesting. You give us that contestation. But I would like you to expand, because that could have formed a very useful segment and discussion of your work. The critical reader and discussant pointed to the issue of this belief issue, of this belief reality. So the Christianity and the Uroyi. The people could be, you know, joining Christianity for safety, which is good. So if you look at Pentecostalism, how does it preserve the Zimbabwe in such a double belief system environment? And would you agree that there is a possibility that the 80% Christianity are actually 80% Uroyi? as well. Thank you.
Okay, Sam, I'll give you a chance to respond to the two submissions before we proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the panelist number two. And now we again start with the last point on a question whether the so-called 80% Christians in Zimbabwe are adherents of the traditional or the indigenous religion. So maybe I should also clarify that Uroyi is not necessarily a religion, yeah. So those who believe in Uroyi, it doesn't matter whether they are followers or adherents of Christianity or the African traditional religion. So I think I actually agree with you, and from the point that I made earlier on, that even those who are said to be Christians, 80%, they also adhere to the indigenous religions. They also practice those African, the so-called indigenous or traditional practices and rituals. So yeah, yes, it's true that, and the evidence also confirm that, because, because even those who take part in these mainline churches, the independent, so-called independent churches, they also embrace some of these practices that were there even before the coming of Christianity. They engaged in such rituals. And you also, as you also pointed out, that most Christians believe in Uroyi. And yes, it's true. And I think that's one. My answer to the first question also answers to your first question. Christians, they believe in Uroyi, and they actually engage in practices of suppressing Varoi, though indirectly. To use Sister Dipio's statement, she mentioned that Christians normally say, go back to sender, and that's exactly what the adherents of indigenous religions, they send all those evil cases to the sender. So they're actually suppressing Varoi in a way, although the society doesn't acknowledge it, but that's a fact. And the issue of women, why women are mostly victims of accusations of Uroyi. Yeah, it's a complicated question again, because the evidence that I found point to the fact that in as much as women are accused, there are instances where even the young people, they are so much into this practice. So this response, I think it also goes to the first panelist question on why the issue of age, the aspect of age is silent here. But from my explanation in my thesis, I discuss issues to do with age, where I emphasize that in the contemporary period, or even during the early colonial era, where people were thrown into Gandawaroi, some of them were actually young women and others were young men. So now, in this case, it's not only women or the old people, but for these societies, it's actually anyone can be witched, anyone can be accused. So that's what the evidence suggests. And the first panelist brought my attention to the Constitution of Zimbabwe. And I must agree with them that the Constitution acknowledges that it makes it clear, in fact, that people have rights to life, freedom from torture, the right to hold their beliefs, which is something that is enshrined in that Constitution, and also the rights of the accused to, give a fair trial, etc. But the same Constitution, when it says people have a right to believe, when someone is dragged to a court of law because they've accused someone, it's a belief, they're acting on their belief. But in that same court of law, they are now being persecuted for acting on that belief only because their actions have infringed with the rights of others. So yes, I must make that clear. I admit I must make that clear and draw the reader's attention to the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Yep. So I think I will make that clear in my final piece. And yeah, I think most of those questions that relate to the constitutional values of Zimbabwean Constitution, they were implied in my thesis, but as you have rightfully pointed out, I need to make them clear, to state it clearly that this is what the Constitution say, but this is what is happening, and what does that mean to the people of Zimbabwe with regards to this whole discussion on Uroyi and the search for justice in the context of the supernatural. So thank you for those questions. Yep, that's my response.
Hey, thank you very much, Sam. I'd now like to invite Dr. John Valigira to please engage the candidate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady and others. Straight to the point. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Doctor, I can hear
Oh,
you.
okay. Yeah, I'm starting by pointing to the way how the thesis has been arranged from the title. And much of what you have written has to be consistent with the title, and then the chapter headings. Okay. Now you have Uroyi contesting witchcraft regulations in Zimbabwe. Does Uroyi mean the same as what you have added? Uroyi, after Uroyi, then contesting what? Does that one match? Is it the same? Okay.
It's muted.
You think
All right.
about. Yeah.
Sam, maybe just hold on. Let's have all the questions
Okay.
first, in the interest of time,
Yeah.
so that you can respond.
Yes.
Thank
Then I'm pointing at the methodology. The methodology, when you are presenting here, you talked of, you interviewed 7 women and 14 men. But in what you have written inside here, on page 22, that one does not match with what you have presented orally. And then I am asking myself why you interviewed less women than men. What justification do you have? And yet, from what is gathered here, women were the most affected. So you justify that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Alex Katuramo.
Thank you, Chair. We do appreciate you, especially delving in an area and important scarcity about Uroyi there. We thank you. I wish that you could comment briefly on the relationship between Uroyi and the Mwari cult in Zimbabwe. And you have already made allusions or references to some of the spirit mediums, like Mbuya, Nehenda on page 88, and he appears somewhere else, a contemporary of others like Kaguri. So what was the relationship? Was the Uroyi, does it have something to do with the Mwari cult? Can you briefly say something about it? Mwari as a deity, something like that briefly. Thank you.
So back to you, Sam.
Okay, Dr. John, I'm going to refer you as panelist 3. Thank you for those questions. And the first one relates to the title, whether the term Uroyi there, Uroyi, is supposed to be there or it matches what is in the subtitle. I think the reason why I did that is because I want to foreground the concept of Uroyi to make sense of what came to be termed witchcraft. So with that, it helps me to understand this phenomenon beyond the colonial notions of witchcraft. So it's, for me, I thought it was very, very important because it actually points to the direction that I'm taking in this research. So I don't know if I answered you there. And also the question on why fewer women than men as my research participants. Like I said in my presentation and the dissertation, I deploy the purposive sampling. So in that case, I managed to get hold of these research participants that were 21, and among whom there were 7 women and 14 men. So it wasn't deliberate, but it happens as the research unfolded. So that would be my response to that. And there's a question by panelist 4 on the link between the Mwari cult and Uroyi. I think the response will be, we have to take you back again to the early colonial period where missionaries and various colonial officials attempted to redefine African cultural beliefs and practices. So I think that question, it then connects to that confusion and conflations that were done by the early colonial officials and missionaries, where everything they didn't understand was misconstrued as a form of so-called pretended witchcraft. So there is no connection between this the Mwari cult and Uroyi in this respect. Although the Mwari cult was not the focus, but I think it's good that you have brought it up, and I think there is no connection, and that question does not it does not form part of my objective in the research, but that is it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. We are almost coming to the end of submissions by the panelists, so I would now like to invite Dr. Zaid, hopefully to ask one or two questions, and then Dr. Mafumbo in that order.
Thank you very much, Chair. Congratulations to Sam and to the supervisors, Dr. Rutabajuuka and Dr. Edgar. To the independent reader, Professor Pio, I can't thank you enough for the work you have done. Sam, once again, thank you for this very beautiful piece, so timely, where we see religion in Uroyi and Uroyi in Christianity, something like that, and many other issues. However, that said, the thesis or the dissertation is well written, but still has a number of issues which perhaps I would wish to point out on my side. On your side, they might be okay. One, the issue of scope. I took off some time to read this. My invitation letter reads 1890, Uroyi, blah, 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 1890 to 2006. The cover page is 1890 to 2023. The declaration page is 1890 to 2022. The abstract is 1890s, 2023. The abstract also talks about 1890, and the scope on page 16 is 1899. And said the scope will also be narrowed down to the post-1980 legal developments. So there is need for some bit of clarity in here, because it affects the entire layout of your dissertation if this is not actually clear. And two is the issue of if what you submitted was 1890 to 2006, one wonders how then you made use of the observation method. What were you observing? And clearly, in your write-up, this is not brought out what you observed and how this fits into your 4 objectives. So that is also the use of the observation method in history. It's an issue that is not just contested, but in this case, it is a method that it's not clear how you indeed used it. And still, when you talk about, in your methodology, you talk about use of interview method, where on page, I think, 25, you managed to identify the right people. And one would wonder, who are the right people? Which criteria were you using to, because culturally, like many parents have already told you, that there is a missing gap in as far as the involvement of women is concerned. And we know culturally, women have been the masterpiece of what has been termed as witchcraft in this and many other. Yes. Like, that's how I've heard. Eh? 3 is how did your identity affect the type of information that you corrected and present in here?
we are not aware whether you are coming from the Gonkwe community or you are an outsider, because there has always been a tendency of portraying a community neighboring us or an distinct community in a way that demeans it, in a way that it is. So what is your identity, first of all? And how did your identity affect the type of information that you are giving us here? This is similar to almost what the independent reader pointed out. Second last, bearing in mind your audience, how can you help to ensure that your research is not overly localized? Very localized. And lastly, to some, witchcraft is simply a social construct. Frame and narrative. If it is a social construct, do you qualify then rumor or the place of rumor in historical reconstruction? Because in many cases, you are talking about accusations. They were accused. So these accusations are always a product of what people have heard others maybe say. I heard so and so say this. So what is the place? How do you qualify the place of rumor in not just your piece here, but in historical reconstruction? Chair, I submit.
Thank you very much, because I was going to say, and lastly. Okay, Dr. Mafumbo. Okay. Sam, good afternoon now. Thank you very much for this work. You know my sentiments around it, and we've been discussing so much. So it was such a pleasure reading it. I just want to bring you fast forward from every comment, from the different comments. I would like to know from you where Zimbabwe now stands, because in 2021, the Human Rights Council member states adopted a resolution on the elimination of harmful practices related to accusations of witchcraft and ritual attacks. And Zimbabwe signed the charter on 21st March, but has not yet ratified it. In your text, you argued that there are demands to repeal some of these laws. So how are the two coinciding? Because on the one hand, they're saying repeal, while on the other hand, they are not ratifying. That's the only question. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you, Dr. Mafumbo. Sam, back to you.
Thank you, panelists. So I'll start by Dr. Zaid's questions, and they are actually important. And I must admit that the way I presented that the time scope can create a bit of confusion, but maybe I can explain why at some point I ended up mentioning 1899, but not 1890. I wanted to draw the reader's attention to that particular year where a colonial legislation was imposed, and this legislation is the Witchcraft Suppression Act, which ended up creating all these witchcraft in cause regulation efforts, problems. So I understand when I was writing under that scope, I was trying to explain why the period 1890, the year in 1890 is important, but not necessarily meaning that I was going to start my journey in this analysis in the 1899. So, but again, you mentioned is 2006. Yes, 2006 is there. And I'll find a way again of clarifying on that. The year 2006 is not the year where my research ends, But it is important again in my analysis because it is the year when the post-colonial Zimbabwean government amended the Witchcraft Suppression Act after several years and decades of this ban on the accusations of witchcraft. So that year is important. So it was a matter of spotlighting important historical moments. But the overall time scope of the study is from 1890 to 2022. And again, that brings us to the question on inconsistencies in my work. The abstract says one thing and the presentation says the other. Yeah, I understand there was a problem there, maybe on my part. At some point, especially when the poster was created, the information that I supplied was inconsistent with what was there in the thesis. But the thesis itself ends in 2022 because that period from 2006 to 2022 gave me sufficient time and material to analyze the developments that occurred after the amendment. And also before 2006, I also discussed them. So those two moments were important because it helps me to understand the changes. How did the people of Zimbabwe received and or make sense of that amendment? And most importantly, I then attended the Dare sessions, the Dare or the Homestead court sessions to observe the proceedings way back in 2022. So that's my response to that. And there's a question on rumor. It's one of that's an interesting question. Louise White has written a book. She actually wrote a book drawing on rumor, which is called The Speaking with Vampires. So rumor is already been confirmed to be an important source of information in the construction of the past. So I think my argument still stands that in as much as the accusations of Uroyi are sometimes based on rumor, it remains a key source. But again, as a historian, I don't rely on mere beliefs, but these are actually confirmed by the society. People have a way of confirming what they believe to exist. So in that case, it moves away from being a mere maybe accusations that are unsubstantiated. But again, it will be something that is confirmed. That is where you see even the traditional healers being consulted. And then people have a way of getting to know the source and of a problem. And Dr. Mafumbo asked a question on Zimbabwe, the current situation in Zimbabwe in this war debate on Uroyi and its regulation and how the government position is also in line with the conventions. Yeah, that is something I hadn't thought about, but I don't think I can sufficiently connect those two. But as of now, the evidence that I have at the moment points to the fact that Zimbabwe is still grappling with the issue of Uroyi, and there appears to be no solutions to the problem, and that is why the state is trying, is making efforts to embrace the traditional or the so-called alternative dispute resolutions mechanisms, which to me, I don't call them alternative though, because they are not alternative. So that alone is the position of the government in the contemporary times. So, yep, that would be my response to that.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam, for your very candid response to the questions. We now have 10 minutes for the audience, both physical and online, to ask questions. But before I open up to that, Dr. Christine Impiangu has a small comment that she would like to raise up to you, Sam, and then I'll open up to everybody.
Yeah, Sam, do you hear me?
Doctor?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Samuel, yeah, I'm sorry to come back, but I just thought that it would be complicated asking later. Kindly, when we go back to the Pentecostal, to Pentecostalism, I would like you to just make a comment on exorcism, you know, like when we say that the Christians are within this, you know, environment where Uroyi is taking place. Did you ever have an experience of witnessing Christians, you know, born again believers praying in the context of Uroyi? You know, exorcism, like, have you been able to see something or in real time with that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. Yeah, I must say that I'm fortunate enough because I was born and raised in a society that embraced both religions, and I had a chance to witness some of these indigenous ritual practices, as well as the Christian practices. So on that note, yes, I've witnessed quite a number of Christians. They normally call altars in the church that I normally go. They would invite people to the altar and they'll say, the spirit of Uroyi come out. That's one thing. And someone would manifest. And moments later, the spirit is presumed to have gone. So that is, I see no difference now with what is done under the context of the indigenous religions. So yes, I've witnessed it, and it's there, and it's almost the same.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Sam. I am going to read out a question to you from Professor Helen Kabara, who is online. And she's asking you to comment on the aspect of having women as the victims, or as the most victims, in view of the belief that women are symbols of divinity because they represent the fertility gods from time immemorial, as symbolized by the oldest civilization in Egypt. So I hope, and I would like to add on something on that, you know, this question of women and especially the old woman, because in my own research, and I came across colonial records where the colonial district commissioners in eastern Uganda were very angry with the people of Bugisu because they had tried all efforts to discourage them from the circumcision dances on the streets and all that, because in their view, these dances disrupted economic activities. And later they were saying, you know, these people don't listen, they are treating the government as an old woman. So, so it is, and so because of this accusation against women, of course, something which you've spoken to, but also the question that Professor Nkabala raises here. At one point, you know, the women are the symbols of divinity. They are the mothers. They are, you know, and then, but at the same time, they are the ones most accused. And Dr. Zaida has told us they are the master architects, well, which I of course don't agree with. So I'd like you to comment on that, but after you've taken a few other questions. So just take note of that, and I'll ask my audience here, physically present, you put up your hands, but online I had some hands up, I don't see them now. Oh, I think the spirits took them away. So, okay, so Tivenga Doreen Rumbi, your hand is up. Could you please unmute and ask your question? Doreen, are you still there? Okay, I'll just move, I'll give the opportunity to Joe.
Yes, thank you, Prof. My question is still on how did he identify people in Zimbabwe? How did he know they were practicing Uroyi? Because for me, I thought snowball sampling was supposed to work, but instead he used purposive sampling. So I'm a bit confused there.
Okay, thank you for your question. We'll get back to you. Dr. Kawobe, Open University of Tanzania, could you please unmute and ask your question?
Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to ask the candidate to tell us the kind of the design he used to guide his study and the why.
Okay, thank you. For the online audience, I'm only going to pick people whose names I can read. So if I can't identify you, sorry, I'll not give you an opportunity. So Samsung, we don't know who you are. I'll give the candidate opportunity to respond to the questions raised so far.
Okay, thank you,
I gave Doreen the opportunity and she didn't. They didn't ask. Doreen, are you still
Can
there?
I ask?
Okay.
Hello?
Good. Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Nyasha, sorry, Nyasha, thank you so much for your presentation. My question is on the aspect of space. You have talked about Gandavaroyi. So I just want to know, how far do you go in terms of exploring the significance of space? Because I know it's also a very significant issue when it comes to Uroyi issues. Like, I come from Zaka, you know, it's one of the spaces that is so much associated with Uroyi. Then there is also Chipinge and other spaces. And also the issue of the rural-urban divide, you know, Uroyi is also, it tends to be also associated with rural spaces. So I just want to know whether you explore that issue of space and how far do you kind of consider that issue of space.
Okay. Thank you, Doreen. Oma?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to declare that I might be conflicted because I'm a strong Pan-Africanist and I believe in local traditional ways. I started as pagan, became a Christian, then went back as a pagan. So I would like just to congratulate Dr. Nyasha for this really very insightful work and also picking the courage to do this kind of work in a very difficult environment, and possibly recommend that in your future work, consider looking at how such practices like witchcraft can be practiced without conflicting the laws. Possibly that would really encourage us to use the traditional technologies and resources in solving many of the problems, instead of focusing on foreign religion, which is really suppressing so much good things that we could do using the local ways. Thank you, and congratulations upon that.
Okay, thank you. Omar Doreen, your hand is still up. I hope it's just, I'm not giving you another opportunity anyway.
Sorry, that I didn't then lower it. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So Samsung SM that I don't know what it is. What is your name? Because we don't want to be bombarded here by people who cannot identify themselves.
Hello, Prof. Sorry for that. My name is Simba.
From?
Hello? Yes, from Zimbabwe.
Okay, please go ahead and ask your question. Yeah.
My question to Nyasha is the population distribution of Zimbabwe. I think we have more women than men, and if in his thesis, women seem to be the victims, like what is he has written. My question would be, we have seen more women attending these churches, maybe the traditional and the Pentecostal. Does it have anything to do with exorcism, like what one panelist has just raised? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's get back to Sam to respond. You don't have to speak at length to every question or comment, Sam. You're at liberty. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and for those questions. Let me start with the question on women. Why women? Why women? Women have the power of divinity. They have the power to give life. And they are mostly accused of Uroyi. Okay, so in my thesis, I argue that witchcraft regulation, in quotes, witchcraft, is an exercise of power and control, starting with the colonialists and with the post-colonial leaders. So in that respect, women, since they hold that power, they are mostly targeted now in this context by the need of maybe by the men's need to control. So, for example, the proverbs that I consulted, they point to the fact that most women, they are accused of witchcraft because they have this power. So the society frame women in order to control them. They created proverbs that discourage women from holding too much power. So that kind of those kind of narratives are created created by Zimbabwe societies, points to the fact that it's a matter of controlling women. That's one possible interpretation to why women are often targeted. But of course, it also the accusation from the evidence that I gathered doesn't only it doesn't target only one gender. Even the men, the young people also are targeted. And like what one of the person who commented, the population itself. So women in that case are bound to be accused. Someone asked the question on space, which exploring that in my other works. But in this dissertation, I managed to use the sacred sites, for example, Gandavaroi and Ezwabeni, and many other sites as an archive to make sense of the African ways of dealing with harm and extending justice and punishing or reprimanding the offenders. So these sacred spaces, for example, Gandavaroi, so many meanings attached to the site, so much so that reading its its construction, it brings out many ideas about how Africans understood Uroyi, how those charged with Uroyi were dealt with, and the continued preservation of that knowledge. So the space in this case becomes a memory scape of making sense of this whole phenomenon. And as for the rural and urban divide, yes, it's another key aspect in this subject. Most people normally say, "Ukaenda kumusha unonoroyo ikoko." You know, it's just a famous phrase, it's a common phrase by most people, that they are afraid to go to their village homes because they understand the village to be a space where most people practice Uroyi. And even on social media, people, they'll just say the village people, the village people. So that alone, it's an important area to look into. So that is why I used Gandavaroi, which is a rural community in Zimbabwe. And that one helps me, helped me to understand the construction of ideas around Uroyi and justice, not only in Gokwe, but across the country. And there's a question on my identity. Where am I as a researcher? And I'm researching on Zimbabwe and the Gokwe community. Zimbabwe, of course, about 70% people in Zimbabwe, they largely speak Shona language, and their culture is almost the same. So the culture from the society where I come from, and we speak the same language with that of where I conducted my research. Their culture is almost the same. It's actually the same. So I didn't see any difference. For me, it was like I'm still in my society, in my community, because there were no major difference.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam, for your responses. I don't have any hands here. So I'm going to give a second opportunity to the online audience, and this should be the last round of questions. I'll begin with Padil Salimo. Please unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, Professor. Actually, I would like... Excuse me? Yeah, thank you, Professor. I would like to congratulate Nyasha for this interesting research. The thing that I would like to understand from him is to what extent this research is really important, and to what kind of contribution it will bring in academia and also in Zimbabwean society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonathan, please unmute and ask your question. Jonathan, are you there? Okay, we'll go to Serubu Derek.
I do have a question. I wanted to ask that in terms of recommendation and investigation, what would Nyasha recommend in the perspective of policing and investigating witchcraft? Because with the birth of social media, I've noted that witchcraft has been reported now openly through head court proceedings as well as social media outlets. But as far as policing is concerned, the law is totally not active in investigating it. So I wanted to know what Nyasha would recommend in that respect.
Thank you very much. Serubu Derek.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'm Serubu Derek from Gulu University Faculty of Medicine. I thank the candidate for his presentation. I would like him to help me understand if during the course of his study he identified any changes in the Uroyi practices from the period of 1890 to modern day time. And then if he can try to draw key similarities between the Uroyi rituals or practices to modern day Christianism or Pentecostalism. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Derek. Vali Katenda, if you're there.
Yes, here for me, I don't have a question. I just want to thank Nyasha for his bravery and boldness to take such a controversial yet interesting research topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll skip and go to Anthony Sebagereka first because I think Joe had an opportunity earlier. So Anthony Sebagereka, please ask your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much, Sam, for your presentation. I think my quick one is slightly related to one that was raised. So given the context that most people who practice witchcraft or who are involved or who are at the heart of this practice is so diverse, taking on different contexts in different places. What would be recommendations to really regulate this? Also realizing that there have been some attempts in different countries to have actively engaged umbrella organizations of people who practice actively this, but I think there have been a lot of infightings within different factions, so regulation has constrained this across various contexts. What would be your recommendations really to be able to kind of decolonize regulation of this practice? Thank you, Sam.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to give to one person. Finally, the others, please ask your comments in the chat because we're really doing bad in terms of time. So Friday's iPhone, is it the iPhone going to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you. Friday Mbiri, a lecturer at Chanibana University in Zambia. The topic has been of interest, and I really followed and learned something. Now, I say, Sam, you have done a very good job, which is indeed very important, and this is what we should continue doing as Africans. Let us explore into our indigenous knowledge, tap into it, and then allow people to pass comments. My question is, after coming to reality on the realities of witchcraft, has anything of your study changed your personal perception regarding witchcraft? If so, how? If no, why? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to close this. Okay, Kenneth Muzata.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very interesting study indeed. Kenneth is from the University of Zambia, Lusaka. I've actually forwarded in the chat box two papers that the author, the presenter can actually refer to, and perhaps also take a context of the Zambian situation on divination, and mentions a lot about witchcraft. But when I read the title for the presenter, Sam, who has actually done a very good job, I find the title very general, and yet he actually mentioned a specific place where his samples were actually drawn. Perhaps he would need to revisit that, because then at the end of the day, we would think that is the general picture in Zimbabwe, which might be misleading. Because qualitative research, mainly subjectivity, I think I've even seen those comments in the chats and the like. So, but I would like to ask one thing from the presenter. Mostly accused persons are women, but we have 7 that were involved in the sample. How can we trust this data? You had more of men and less of women, yet they are the most victims of this. And I'm sure you must have even been informed by literature to that effect. How can we trust this particular data? Then lastly, the relevance of this study to current curriculum. Would you actually make a comment on that? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Kenneth. Dan Omondi, if you're still there.
Yes, I am present. My name is Dan Martin from Kenya. I teach at Rongo University. One, I want to congratulate the candidate for this very brave and daring move in academia. This is great. And 2, I am just interested to learn more how Zimbabwe would relate to Kenya. Currently, we are dealing with an issue of Night Runners Association in Kenya, and I don't know whether Night Runners would be considered as part of witchcraft. I don't know how that happens in Zimbabwe. Maybe he might just allude to, make a mention of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And lastly, Aine Amos.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is Aine Amos from Kabale University. Thank you, the candidate, for reaching this step. It is indeed an interesting study. My question is, 1, in the context of your study between 1980 to 2022, how do you put into consideration the individual characteristics out of especially those that you interviewed, especially education level, age, tribe, and location? Does this change the perspective of Uroyi among the Zimbabwe people, depending on how educated they are, how old they are, or even where they are located? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. Sam, do you want to make a comment? As I did say, Sam, a comment, you don't have to speak to everything, but perhaps what you can do in 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, those are all interesting questions and comments, and I find them very useful as I go forward, with this research, which I plan to, to broaden into a continental dimension, the whole aspect of Uroyi, on how these cultures and beliefs, compared to other parts of the continent. There is a question on women. It keeps coming again, and I must treat this seriously. But here, it appears the question again is on accusations. So, because I was focusing more on the regulation of Uroyi, the violence that is associated with it, I was more interested in how those in positions of power have been managing this whole situation. So with that, it became a situation where I had to interact more with men than with women. So that is why it turned out that way. So it's all about the objective of the study that ended up pushing me to that direction. But I agree that it's important to also pay more attention to that aspect of women as victims. But in the study where you try to understand the regulation, I need to understand now how this practice is being regulated by those who are in charge of the whole practice. But this is not to say that the views of those who are not in power is not important. And on the aspect of recommendations, of course, as historians, we are trained not to give recommendations. We normally provide evidence and we try to make sense of the facts that we gather. And then it will be up to those who are going to read our work, are going to decide what to do with it. So maybe I will be guided on that, on how to make it, how my work can be used and can also inform policy. But on the contribution, I think the work is very, very key in areas to do with intellectual property, especially in a world where the traditional medicine is gaining popularity. So, like I indicated in my work, we see traditional healers resisting to provide information because, and this is not only the evidence that I gathered from the interviews, the healers, but also previous studies like Gordon Chavundukas and others have also indicated that in their work. Traditional healers resist by all means to provide their more information on their practice because they are afraid that their knowledge will be stolen. So it's all about intellectual property. There's no sufficient infrastructure to attend that knowledge. So I think it helps even the governments to think about how we can, as a society, protect that knowledge. And as for the academic contribution of the work, as I have pointed out already, this work is important. It brings another perspective where I challenge some of those notions and concepts that have been used by previous writers to make sense of this phenomenon in Africa. So by bringing this study, I'm adding voice to that so as to help us understand this subject better.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. And thank you, our audience, both online and physically present here. We now come to the end of that part of the defense. And at this point, I would like to ask the panelists to retreat to another closed room to make a verdict. And while we do that, we ask all of you to keep around and the ones online to stay with Sam until the very final decision is made. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to be sure that Sam is still there. Sam? What is it? Yeah. Is anybody chatting with him on WhatsApp? Okay.
And the video, yes. Now I can be able to. All right, but the video, I can't turn on the camera. Maybe the host can enable that again. All right, thank you, Dr. Pamela. I can hear you.
Well, sure. Hopefully at some point the Uroyi will allow you to turn on the video, because try again to turn on the video.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, Sam, really thank you very much for this study. And this has been very unique for us. I don't think I just want to say as a department or a school, but as a university, because we had, of course, up to 500 people on Zoom, over 400 on YouTube. And so if we add this together with the audience physically present here, we have up to 1,000 people listen to your study. It went viral. And I think like most of the people already said, I want to congratulate you for being brave to take on this topic. Something that people want to listen to but are shy to study. And this just speaks from the interest that we had. In fact, I got a message from one of the principals, the principal of College of Veterinary Medicine, who said that you owe the audience another defense, those who were not able to join, and so they missed to listen to you. And, you know, CHUS should arrange for another presentation of your defense so that people who missed to listen get the opportunity to do that. And one of the professors on the Academic Leadership Forum here said, I see many people frustrated by having failed to log in on different chats, including my village groups in Ajumani and Moyo district. Is it too late to expand the capacity? Makerere has been taken to the people. Thank you, Sam, for taking Makerere to the people. And for getting us, of course, we also had online participants really from different parts of the world, from different academic institutions, and I want to thank them for that. So we, as the panelists, have discussed or deliberated, you know, having gone through your presentations and the feedback and all that. And of course, we all agree that you pass. Many congratulations. Many congratulations, Sam. You did very well. You did very well. Many congratulations. Oh, don't cry. Many congratulations. Farouk, you should take a picture of that. Yes, I'm giving him a moment. I'm giving him a moment before I proceed. Yeah. Yeah, they're so tears. I know it's been not a very long journey, but it's been a long journey nonetheless. A PhD is a PhD, irrespective of how many years it takes you to do it. So many congratulations, Sam. And of course, congratulations messages are really flowing in from different participants online. So that said, we still, I mean, we recommend that there are a few things that you need to address to make this work even better. It's good, yes, but you can make it much, much better. So I'm going to read out some of the things, but again, as usual, I will email you the full comments from Secretariat and the details of what is expected of you. But no, so that said, one of the issues that came up was that you need to engage with the agreed values in the constitution of your country, and the idea being that the constitution is sort of a repository of the shared values of the people of Zimbabwe. And so when you have aspects that deal with people's right to believe, right to life, vis-a-vis what your study investigated, where does that leave us? So we thought that by you doing that, by reflecting on the agreed values in the Constitution, that helps to create a balance. So this is what is happening, but the constitutional framework, I think, helps all of us to better understand this within the context of Zimbabwe. And then this comment came up: the binaries, the we or the them and us. This is something that runs through the work, and we ask you to moderate that because it creates polarization. It runs in several sections of the text, but particular attention was drawn, for example, to pages 156 to 57, where, among other things, we ask you to engage with the scholars reasonably rather than dismiss them because they seem to hold a view that is different from your own. The other one is that you should harmonize the discussion around the Christian beliefs and Uroyi. And I think the key thing here really is the concept that that came up from the independent reader. You pay attention to hybridity and how that defines identity, because it's not convincing, or it seems very mechanical to say the two are totally detached, when we know that this, people's everyday living and clearly people are crisscrossing. So rather than create this big wall between the two, think about it along the lines of hybridity. And the texts for you to read were proposed. Again, that will be sent to you in the report. So along that same line, we thought that it does no harm for you to at least include, however little it is, but include something on the church documentation, so that you're not again throwing it out there or locking it out there completely, maybe again because of the binaries, right? So if you can be able to reach out to the church documentation, that would make the work even much better. You try to answer this in the questions, but now we want it in the text, that you should engage with the concepts of it's Uroyi and Enanga. And this seem to be, they're lived realities, but we can't take them as, like, again, completely fixed. You need to engage with them. I think there's some fluidity somewhere, and maybe if that comes out clear in the text, then it makes it even much better. Then the other one was your positionality as a researcher. Within the text, you share a bit of your own experience at the age of 12. But then you don't tell us perhaps what has changed since then and how, as a researcher, and then you get into this project. So the suggestion is that after you give that narrative of your own experience at the age of 12, perhaps you could say, okay, having had that experience, now you come in as this kind of researcher and this is your position, so that it's clear to the readers. Again, there's the questions, and I think several people asked why you had more men than women in your study. And I think your response to that was very clear, in line with your objectives and and the focus of your study. And so again, the panelists advise that you also make that clear in the work, because you answered that very well verbal here, but in the work it doesn't come out explicit. So when you're giving justification on the numbers, you could just say, well, although majority population in Zimbabwe is women, if I got that right, and although it is women who are most victimized for this, you focused more on the men because they are the ones who are actually attacking these women. So you're looking at it from this angle, but not very much from the angle of those who are victimized. And then, yes, you should clean out the mix-up in the period, when the study begins and when it ends. I want to say that I think I appreciate why your study sort of gets to really contemporary times because of the nature of the study, what you're studying and what is going on. So it is not like you're studying a specific historical events and you're saying, okay, this ends here. But you need to have one date, so we don't have the 2022, 2023. And maybe by the end of today, you change it to 2024. So just to be consistent. And when all that is done, you read through your work and clean out repetitions. Maybe you are too close to it, so you might need someone who has not read it at all to help you tighten the loose ends that come in form of repetitions. So this is what okay, Sam, we are back. We are fighting against. No, I think Enanga has intervened to make sure that we are back. Online. So I had just said that yes, in my communication, I will guide on what comes with the submission of the final thesis, and of course you'll have to attach a compliance report. I would like to congratulate you once more, and maybe just to share with the audience here that Sam's work has been exceptional because, yes, he's a Edgar Henkel student, but along the way, because of his work, he got several grants from different places. He traveled to conferences in different parts of the world. He's got invitations to go and teach at least for a semester or 2 weeks somewhere in different universities. And when the South African Historical Society had their biannual conference at the end of June, some study won the run-up graduate student prize in Johannesburg. So I'm not surprised that today you've brought us an audience of 1,000 people to listen to your work. Many congratulations, Sam. I think I'll give you an opportunity if you want to say a word or two before we close this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pamela. I have nothing much to say except to thank my supervisors, Dr. Edgar Taylor, Dr. Peter Rutabajuuka, and my doctoral committee members, my cohort members, and the entire history department team, Makerere, and here at the University of Zimbabwe. Their support has helped me to reach this stage. But most importantly, I would like to thank my family, their support. Yeah. So thank you for that. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's all I can say for now. And maybe I can just mention a few names from my family. You have been giving me support throughout my doctoral studies. Maybe I'll start with all my uncles from Joshua, Moses, Ishmael, Benjamin, and their wives. I won't mention their names for the sake of time, but I'd like to thank everyone who has been supporting me since 2021. That's all I can say for now.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Don't disappear because we have to take photographs with you. You'll have to put back the video. So back here, I really would like to thank the panelists. But also in a special way, I would like to thank Professor Farouk for doing everything possible to see that this defense is successful. We had challenges. We didn't have power in the college in the morning. We're running on generator and the internet kept acting up, but Farouk did all he could do to ensure that the defense is successful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Farouk. At this point, I would like to invite first the supervisors to take a picture with Sam. Who is taking the picture? Let's see. Let it be at the center. No, yeah, the center is better. Yeah, the center. Yeah. Back at the center. Yeah, that's better. Just have to move a little bit closer. Yes. So I'd like to ask the panelists. Yes. Oh, I'll do that. Can you? Lillian. Lillian, come and take pictures. Yes. That's a pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. That is good. I will have to. Oh, you come on. Yes. Hold on, that's what they did. Right. The camera. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. You are very photogenic. Thank you. The most emotional, the reception, it was the attendance. When the couple, they're not here.
Congratulations, Sam.
Very much.
Can we have a pic? Colleagues from Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Dr. Edgar.
So let's take the pic with the other PhD students in the school. Then we'll have the team from Zimbabwe students. Okay.
Congratulations, Dr.
That's Uroyi. Now what is it? It's asking me to send where? It's what do I do? What do you have? It's what do I send? It's asking me to send.
You first say.
Approve the send.
Put us in camera.
Oh, okay. You know this technology. Oh Lord. No, me, I have a problem. What did you say? I said?
You said, yeah. But it's
Okay.
fine.
No, take one. Although. I don't know. Okay. All right.
You are not a celebrity, just to know.
Oh, thank you, Wimbai and Portia. I can see you there.
All right. Colleagues, I'd like to bring this to an end. Thank you very much. Sam, we're waiting to see you at the graduation. And I hope that you'll be able to be here present. No graduating online. We want to see you and give you hugs, not virtual hugs. All right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. And I bring this to an end. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here with us for these very many hours.